look, there are going to be hard times. There are going to be times when it doesn't make sense. It's frustrating, but it's in those moments where you can have the biggest impact on those around you because people watch you. They want to see how do you respond, and they will know whether they want to follow you or avoid what you're doing by how you respond in the tough times. And then there'll be great times. Enjoy them. Celebrate with your team. Bring about a change in your team to say, look what you've done, not look what I've done.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Successful leaders make building healthy culture a priority. Meet other leaders who are building a culture where people want to stay and know how to win together.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today owner-operator Larry Everett from Reston, Virginia. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Jay.
Larry is the owner-operator at a Chick-Fil-A in Reston, Virginia called the North Point Village Center, and he's been there 9 years. In fact, you just celebrated your 10th year as an operator. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Loving it. Loving every minute of it. Best calling ever.
That's so good. That's so good. I'm glad. And that's what I love about you. I think that's what attracted to me on LinkedIn, because I just saw how much fun you're having with your team all the time. You're always celebrating them. And so really glad we got to get to know each other. And here we are. We get to share your story. I've enjoyed your story. I want the world to hear it. There's a pre-story to Chick-fil-A, a life before Chick-fil-A, right? A career before that. And you were a fireman. In fact, you retired as a Fire Battalion Chief there in Virginia. And want to get into an event that happened during your career. I'm sure there were, and we'll hear a couple other stories from that too. But one particular day our entire nation remembers. I'm just going to set that up and let you tell a little bit about. And I have some questions about it too, but tell a little bit about that event and how you got involved.
Yeah, so 9/11, which is actually a week from today, from the.
That's right.
Sorry, I'm dating you here. If that's
no, you're good. Yeah, as of the date of this recording, it's next week.
Yeah, it's 1 week from today, and much like anybody who was over the age of 40 would remember, maybe 35 would remember the day. Much like everybody else, I happened to be sitting in the kitchen of the firehouse. We had just finished our morning lineup. I was sitting there just kind of planning my thoughts for the day and just watching the TV. And we saw the kind of the events starting to unfold in New York City. And, we didn't know really what had happened because you only saw the one building burning. That's the news suddenly flashed on, oh, there's a building on fire in New York City. The World Trade Center is burning. And then within a few moments, the second plane hit the building. And for most of us, we thought that was just like, they were replaying it. They had, a plane hit the building. They were just showing the replay. And in reality, what it was is the second building was now hit. And that's when your mind kind of like, what? And then you realize it was a second plane, and that's when our lives changed. It was a visual image that changed the entire world, all in that moment. We all can remember kind of like what we had for lunch that day, or breakfast, or what we wore for our shirt, our clothes, where we were when we first saw it, all those things, images. And so for me, it was the same thing. So I kind of was like shocked, sitting there just wondering, what? Wow, that as a firefighter, that's going to be really hard to deal with. I mean, just where do you even start? And then we started hearing local news talking chatter about planes out of the area that are not supposed to be where they're supposed to be, kind of thing. So I just told my guys, I said, hey, just in case, get a change of clothes, some extra water, some extra radio batteries and stuff. And let's put them on the engine. We're fairly close to DC, where I was then assigned. We were probably around maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes outside of DC. So you just didn't know. And then we got the call to go help Arlington County after the Pentagon was hit. We end up in the Pentagon. We fought fires in the Pentagon almost the entire day. the descriptions, there were many descriptions depending on where we were in the building, but anywhere from very extremely hot, unbelievably hot, to extremely dark and confining. Um, so just a real crazy day. For me, though, it was an awesome day to be able to know I was doing a part to serve my country and in some way help my country recover, be better, be more stronger coming out of it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know there's some more about the event. You're in the building, and want to hear about. So you had your men with you. You're a captain at the time, I think, and how many men did you have with you on your team?
So I had 4 on my engine, 3 plus myself, 4, and then we were paired with a group of 75 others in what's called an attack group.
Okay.
And so we were going in to fight the fires in the outer ring. If you know anything about the Pentagon, you know it's not just one building, it's actually 5 separate buildings, each 5-sided, each inside of the next ring, separated by a space of about 35 to 40 feet of grass area, walkways, things like that. And so the outer ring is the E ring, and the plane hit that, but penetrated through the other rings in some fashion. So we were assigned to the outer ring, the E ring, to put the fires out. So we broke our groups down from 75 into 3 groups of 25. One group was fire attack, one group was rescue or safety, and one was in rehab to rest, recover, and then get ready to go back to safety. And then safety would go into attack would go to rehab, and we just rotated that way throughout the day. So went up on the 3rd floor was our first internal attack. As we went up the building, they'd been pushing so much water into the building, through master streams, heavy caliber streams. We were pushing water in from the outside to the inside, trying to knock it down so we could make entry. Went up kind of the 3rd floor, and the wind was whipping through the building because of the extreme fire that was in the building. It was creating its own, wind currents and things inside the building. It was consuming so much oxygen, sucking so much oxygen into the building, into the fire itself. And so we got to the 3rd floor, and we made a right down the hallway from the stairwell, and the wind was whipping behind us, and this wall of fire was running at us, but the wind was being sucked in at such a velocity into the fire that it was creating this cavern, this cave where the fire would come over top of us and then suck back in. And it just was this continual rotation of the fire. And so we walked down into this cave and just sprayed our hoses as far down as we could, slowly pushing the fire back into itself. And then, turning side to side, knocking fires down along the way. So that was kind of the 3rd floor. What we noticed there was the incredible heat. We literally watched metal desks and metal chairs melting down. The file cabinets just melting into piles of just puddles of melted liquid. And it was just incredibly hot. It was a giant concrete building, totally involved inside. And so it was kind of like an oven. I know scientifically they've estimated the temperatures between 2,000 and 3,000 degrees, at the time of our entry. And kind of the miracle for me in that moment is that we were able to stay in there for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, putting water on the fire, and then we'd have to come out. But our gear is only rated for 1,500 degrees for 5 minutes, and then it degrades and breaks down. And yet nobody was burned. I mean, very minor injuries, no major fire department injuries. I think we had one possible heart attack from another kind of division, but for the most part, my group was fairly safe throughout the event.
Well, you were telling me about one of the injuries. I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah. How just the protective gear. Yeah, tell us a little bit about how that one injury happened.
Yeah, so our ensemble is designed to overlap and button up pretty tight so that it protects all of your skin. And so we'll wear a helmet, obviously. We wear our mask. We wear a little hood over like the outer rim of our mask, which protects our sides, our face, our ears, our necks. And then we have a collar on our coat that buckles up around our neck and it buttons down the front. And then it covers our pants, which are held up by the infamous suspenders
Right.
and so the boots and all that. Well, in this case, whether he forgot to buckle his collar or it popped open or whatever, it had kind of come undone. And so his collar was loose on this firefighter. And because of the superheated concrete will spall. It has moisture in it. Even after decades, it still has moisture in it. And so if it gets superheated, it converts to steam, and then the concrete will pop off. And little pits or little bits and pits of pieces of concrete are spalling off and popping down. And so anyhow, so he had kind of leaned his head forward, which exposed kind of the back of his neck. A piece of concrete came down, got him right behind the neck, went down his collar, down between his shirt and his coat, and literally everywhere it touched going down, it burned a hole in his shirt, just scorched the hole in it. And then, of course, on his back, he had these little red dimple marks, where the concrete, which was superheated, was touching him. So he looked like, jumping around and going crazy.
Right. That'll catch your attention real quick.
Yeah, well.
So glad he wasn't injured. What would you say would be some lessons you could take from that day that you could apply to life? Maybe use it in everyday work now as a owner of a business that you own.
Yeah. So the first thing is you can never prepare for everything.
Okay.
What you can do is you can use previous experiences to make the best of the particular situation. And I think, if you're old enough to remember back to the old Carousel slide trays.
Oh yeah.
Back in high school, elementary school, where the little square picture would drop in front of the camera lens, or between the camera lens and the light, and they would project up the image. Well, we all have those carousels in our minds, and they pull around real quick and drop in a slide into the situation that we're currently facing. We may not have the experience in that particular event or situation, but we have other life experiences that we can draw into that. And so no matter what the situation, nobody could have prepared for 9/11. Nobody could have prepared for the amount of resources that we'd have to use, staff, water, equipment, all that stuff. Nobody can prepare for that. So you have to take that slide tray and it drops in a slide, chink, and you use that information to make the best possible decisions you can at that moment. But you've got to then add to your slide tray consistently so that your slide tray, when called upon, can act rapidly and accurately to put up the best slide as possible. Because what you wouldn't want to happen is, you're in the middle of a firefight, and all of a sudden a slide pops in that talks about, well, let's have a discussion about what type of hose do we want to take in on this fire. We're going to come together. All right, let's go. Everybody gather up. Let's have this conversation.
Wrong slide.
Right? Okay. We need decisive action in that moment. You need people to make good decisions. And when you make bad decisions, and you don't have to go far in the news to see a lot of bad decisions that have been made recently in corporate America. When you make a bad decision, it's critical to own it as a leader. Critical that you own that immediately. You don't backtrack. You don't do anything except own it. And when you own it, you may tend to think you're looking foolish on your own self. The reality is that you're looking like a true professional and the hero of the story in that moment to everybody else. But your pride will often make you think you're looking silly or foolish. So here's what I would say to these. As the slides drop in and they don't align, then do so. You need to do so with a way to rapidly respond in an appropriate manner. Let another slide drop in. Think, because if you don't, what ends up happening is you look even more silly on the second when you've been proven wrong publicly, when you've had a disastrous turn of events because of your decisions. So I would say learning slide trays.
I love it. You told me earlier that firefighting was the best job you've ever had, but Chick-fil-A is the best calling you've ever had. So tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah, so the fire department was great. I got into it at 16 years old, and just fell in love with it. Ended up spending 35 plus years doing it. Um, Retired 2015. Uh, had been working part time with a Chick-fil-A for the last couple of years of my retirement career, just helping an operator, just kind of with leadership development stuff, and just helping to be more effective. And then you just kind of got the bug, For most of my fire department career, I worked with youth ministry or some sort of young adult ministry of some sort, and I thought, sure enough, I'm going to retire from the fire department, go into full time ministry, and have a blast. Well, that all changed, and I just felt the calling to apply. Applied for Chick-fil-A, got it. It took me 6 years, but I got it. Um, and now, I like to tell people I have one of the greatest youth ministries I could ever want. I got a whole bunch of youth work for me, and every day I get a chance to serve them. So that's kind of my transition into Chick-fil-A. Both the fire department and Chick-fil-A were both done on a whim, but it was ordained that that's where I was supposed to be. I love every minute of it. And the fire department was a great job, but it had ended, and now I'm being called. I believe that called to serve in Chick-fil-A, and one day I'll end this too.
I love that point that you make about how you're working with these youth, and others that work with you. And I think you're alluding to the fact that life kind of bleeds into work and work kind of bleeds into life, right? It's all one thing. We try to compartmentalize. We go to work, we kind of shut off our brain, shut off our life, but it just has a way of following us to work. How have you been able to help people with life as they work for you?
Yeah. So, man, I really don't know how leaders can get away from it. Um, you have to be doing life. If you're any sort of leader, you got to be doing life with people. I mean, I don't care how far up the CEO chain you go, uh, that CEO's got people working alongside of them. They could be, 100,000 employees strong corporation, but that person at the top, however disconnected he or she may be, has an assistant, has a staff, a general staff, whatever you want to call them, that somebody in their lives they should be touching and making a difference in. Or in my case, I've got 65 employees out here that I get to love on every day. And if I get to love on them and care for them and be involved in their lives, I've had the opportunity to perform at least one wedding, I think two, for my staff. I've been at the birth of their children. I sat in the hospital when one of my employees, I spent 3 days in the hospital when one of my employees' brothers was dying. I spent 3 days there with the family because they just didn't have anybody. They didn't know what to do. They're from a different culture, and they couldn't understand half the things that were going on. And so I ended up just spending the time with them and the doctors, trying to help them coordinate. And I got a chance to really be there in the moment when they're losing their son and a brother all at the same time, for the mom and for the brother. And I was there at the moment when he passed, just being there and just hugging on him. That's being involved. That's making a difference.
That's incredible.
And so I just think everybody has that opportunity. It's a gift to be in life with somebody, doing life with somebody.
I love that. Yeah, that is such a great reminder. It is a gift that we have each other. We get to share life together, and whether we're working shoulder to shoulder with them, or directing, or sitting in a hospital room, those are opportunities to do life together. So thanks for modeling that. Again, that's one of the things I loved about your story, that I just kept seeing you interacting with your team and caring for them, celebrating them. So I'd encourage anybody to jump on LinkedIn or wherever Larry's on socials. We'll link those below
Yeah.
and learn more from his model. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
Your team around you, they're wanting to grow, right? They might join as a team member. They want to be a team leader, then they want to be a shift leader. They want to move up through your organization. What are some ways that you work with them to help them to grow every day?
I think that there's a misconception that leadership development has to be big and programmatic and has to have all these steps and things like that. And I think, man, you can teach so much in the little. And what I mean by that is every day, just present a scenario. I have about 20, 25 scenarios that I just ask my up and coming leaders and team members as I want to grow them. Hey, if this were to happen, a guest comes up and wants to just do, exchange $100 bill, break it down. What do? And you just wait for a response. And then in that moment, I mean, there may not be a right or wrong answer to it, but then you can ask, like, follow, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And what I've done in that moment is I've dropped another slide in their carousel. And that carousel will be used over and over by them. And so, again, it doesn't have to be a huge, long, drawn-out process, although there are formalities that we have to go through with our leaders. But every day, just ask a simple question. And you can ask 2 or 3 people at once, hey, here's a scenario for you guys. And then they talk about it amongst themselves. Well, what if you did this? What if you did that? Which builds team camaraderie, because they're solving a problem together. They're thinking through the problem dynamically, using each other's skills and gifts to bring their experience to the table to solve it. And then they're also listening to the ideas of others, which allows them to take perspective in. Because sometimes we fail as leaders to take perspective, which in that moment is saying, I'm closing off my carousel. I'm not letting you put anything else in my carousel because it's perfect, which is a failure at leadership. We've always got to be taking information in, even if it's wrong. If you learn something from the worst leader in the world, what you end up learning is don't do that. That's something not to do, which is a very, very valuable lesson to learn. So anyhow, it's these 1-2 sentence questions, scenarios, you just push them out. Here you go. Do this.
That's so good.
What do you think about that? What do you think about this? What would you do in this situation? And it makes all the difference in leadership development because they're learning in informal settings the hard things, as opposed to trying to sit in some room and put it up on a whiteboard and talk,
And there's a place for that, but I love the
Sure.
in the moment kind of leadership you're doing. And for those of you who may not have this visual picture of a slide carousel, so just Google slide carousel or slide projector. And what you're going to see is, imagine a regular projector that you might know of, a digital projector that's throwing a light on the wall, an image on the wall. And so there's that light going out on the wall. This machine has a donut, shaped disc on top of it, and it's filled with pictures. And so when that picture drops drops down in the machine, and light goes through it, that image gets projected on the wall. And that's what Larry's talking about here. For those of you who may not have been around like
the younger crowd.
The younger crowd. So it's a fascinating piece of technology that helped us in our day. And so this idea is an unlimited carousel where you could have many, many pictures of experiences and past and scenarios. And I love this idea, Larry, of you having a special carousel in your mind that you're dropping, say, 25 scenarios that you're always rotating through your leaders and making sure they've thought through these scenarios. And it could be, like you said, a scenario where there's no right answer, but it gives you a chance to evaluate what would I do in that situation. And I just think that's so great. I want every leader to catch that image, at least have a short list of case study moments that you can throw out to your team and say, hey, what would you do if this were to happen?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be about the business.
Right. Yeah.
Oftentimes, we're dealing with generations that are younger than us that are experiencing life in a completely different way than we did. And we can help them navigate some of those tumultuous times with some basic wisdom that's dropped in. Just, oop, here's a little nugget. Oop, here's a little nugget. At the same time, we need to listen because what they're bringing to the table is another slide to our carousel.
There you go.
And maybe we can learn something new. I mean, we've all joked about, well, if you want your VCR programmed, a VCR, for those of you who
Right.
don't know, but if you want your DVR or your VCR programmed, you always asked your teenager to do it.
True.
Because they
right.
knew. Well, the old parents, they were too stuck in their ways or whatever, didn't want to learn it. And in business, we can't be that way. Business, as leaders, we've got to be open to those new ideas. Now, maybe it's don't ever do that idea. And note to self, never do that. However, there's also great ideas out there that can spur on monumental growth in our businesses.
What happens when you go to your team and you ask for ideas and they give you a pretty bad idea? How do you handle that?
Yeah. So the first thing I would do is, oh, okay, let's talk about that. And tell me more. What do you mean by that? Have you thought of, and then you drop in, again, another nugget of truth to allow them to come to a conclusion that, oh, yeah, maybe that's a bad idea. But if we did this, 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 and this, it becomes a good idea that we can deploy.
That's so
or
good.
maybe they just come up with, ooh, yeah, that was a bad idea. And that's okay because they've dropped the slide in.
Right. And if you shut down their bad idea too fast, what happens then?
You've lost them. If you stifle them really in almost any way, if you stifle them, then you've lost them. What you want to do is you want to bring about a change to them slowly. Their ideas are going to be immature. They're going to be faulty. They're going to be bad. I mean, just disastrous ideas. No, don't ever do that. That's not necessarily the response. The response is help them see why there's a better option. Because oftentimes, especially with the younger generation, when you tell them no, they're hearing it as a personal attack in some fashion. They're hearing it as being, oh, you're dumb. That's so stupid. Why would you? And we want to be about builders. We want to be about having an opportunity to grow our employees to a point of where they can feel like, man, I love this place. I love working for him. I love being a part of this team. And that's done through encouragement, strengthening, challenging, providing them a challenging environment and growth opportunities.
In fact, I'm going to quote you. The other day, you said it this way. If you shut down their voice, you've lost their eyes.
Yep. Because they're going to stop looking. In our business, well, in most businesses, I should say, not just ours, you want their eyes. In the fire department, it is critical to have your eyes open. If you get somebody who is just blindly following you in an emergency, the problem is you've lost the other. In my case, I would go in with 4 people, myself and 3 others, or 2 others if the driver happened to be outside. But either way, but I've lost 4 other eyeballs that could see something. At least 4 others, if not 6 other eyeballs that could help me see something that I would miss. And in a fire scenario or some sort of disaster scenario, the reality is you need every eye possible. Now, you do need people to respond when you say, hey, do this. You need them to respond by doing such, unless they see something that would be detrimental to X action.
Right.
And in most career fields, I'd venture to say, brave enough to say, all career fields, you want many eyes looking at it. The insecure leader will be the one who stifles the ideas of others for his or her own growth and not focused on the potential of the business.
So good.
So you lose, if you shut them down, you close their voice, you lose their eyes. Don't allow them to stop talking. Allow them to talk in a way that helps make the right decision. And that comes from, again, dropping those slides in, nuggets of truth, helping them change, helping them grow, because then they see what the right path is on their own. Sometimes they get it on their own.
We, in our organization, Leaders Q, as we're coaching teams, we have a principle that we call, or an idea that we call every level ownership. And that fits in well with what you're talking about here. And so just imagine, you're the owner, right? You're the business owner. You're that, at times you're in the fire leading, but many times you might be, like you said, out on the lawn directing in that important role. But you have the sense of ownership, the entire thing that's happening, the entire business. And so for you to activate 65 pairs of eyes on your team, you're spreading that ownership out in larger and smaller ways. Maybe some people are looking at 2 feet, 2 square feet of the property, but they're really focused on that 2 square feet, while others are looking at a larger part of the real estate, larger part of the business. So having that every level ownership and getting everybody's eyes engaged, the way to do that is to let them have their voice and be heard. And I love that idea of listening so that they're also watching. So Larry, you're 9 years in, 10 years in as an operator, 9 years at your location. What would you say to someone who's a couple of steps behind you? Maybe they're halfway on that journey, or they're just a couple of years behind that. What would you say to them as an encouragement or a challenge or lesson learned to pass along to them?
And don't forget the gift you've been given. I mean, this business, if I'm talking to a Chick-fil-A operator, I would say, look, you've been given a gift. Appreciate it. Be thankful for it. Maximize it to give that gift to others. Help others grow. If I'm speaking to a leader in another type of career field or job, if you will, I would say that, look, there are going to be hard times. There are going to be times when it doesn't make sense. It's frustrating. But it's in those moments where you can have the biggest impact on those around you, because people watch you. They want to see, how do you respond? And they will know whether they want to follow you or avoid what you're doing by how you respond in the tough times. And then there'll be great times. Enjoy them. Celebrate with your team. Bring about a change in your team to say, look what you've done, not look what I've done.
That's such great advice. Thank you. And there are probably people listening right now that maybe they're going through a tough time, and to really step back and see that as an opportunity to lead better, win your team over because of your response. Those are the moments that really matter, aren't they? So great encouragement. Larry, thank you for your time. Thanks for your story. What an incredible story. And now here you are, you're getting to have an impact on so many lives, whether it's your community or your team, family. So thanks for all that you do, and just all the joy you're putting out there. We appreciate that from you every day. So thanks for being on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. See you next time. We would like to note that Leaders Q serves individual owner-operators and their teams and is not affiliated, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Chick-Fil-A Incorporated.